I think that's the biggest difference. The folks acting from a place of fear, I think have struggled, and people from acting a place of abundance and just like, we are where we are, like, what can we do?
Right.
Or they might not be thriving, but I think they're surviving.
The secret to creating great content comes down to two things our guest explains. One, is it interesting? And two, does it add value? Hi, I'm Joshua Carlsen, and in today's Ask an Expert segment, I'm going to be standing up with our guest, Robert Glazer. He is the founder and CEO of an agency called Acceleration Partners. They're focused on helping organizations with performance-based marketing. But he's also the author of a newsletter called Friday Forwards that goes out to over 200,000 people every single week. He's been doing this for over 5 years, and he shares that in the beginning, he didn't have anybody following him. So he just had to continue to write until eventually his insights and his consistency propelled him to where he is today. Now let's get started. All right, Robert, thank you for coming on our Ask an Expert segment today.
Thanks for having me.
Perfect. So the first thing I want to ask is, how do you do it all? So you got a lot of pots in the fire, from your business, your primary business. You've got a Friday segment that we're going to talk about a little bit later. You're on shares. You're doing a lot of different things. How do you keep it all together?
Good teams and good support structure. I think it's probably a misperception that I do more than I do versus I play the role that I'm good at, and I realize the parts of it that I don't do, and find good people to help me with that.
Okay. So my next question is about talent. I think
Yeah.
a lot of us understand that some people are bestowed with natural gifts, obviously in the physical space. Michael Jordan's a good example of this, or LeBron James. It's very easy to recognize that. But a lot of people don't see the effort and the hard work that goes into it behind the scenes. What are the recommendations that you can give to people to give them the motivation, or really just the recognition that they can overcome the lack of natural gift that other people have?
Yeah, I think that I'm going to get this wrong, but what was the quote I heard recently? It said something like, talent talent wins, but hard work without talent usually loses to hard work. Something like that. But it was a great quote in the context of, I think sometimes, natural talent, gives people a false sense of security, right? Those people who are really amazing, like the people you talk about, pinnacle, they have the talent, but they have the work ethic. I mean, I'm watching, if you read about LeBron or Kobe, or my son and I are watching The Last Dance, I mean, Jordan just, he just wasn't going to lose, and he wasn't going to let anyone lose, and he would outwork anyone and work the hardest. And he was not, didn't make his high school team. Like he just, I think his coach said, I will work harder than anyone. So sometimes that developed talent, I think, is better than the natural talent. But somehow the universe tended to reward, I think, the longevity of something, and I think you need to stay with it. And Darren Hardy talked about this book, Multiplier Effect. Sometimes you do something and it's just like this for a year or two until you get the hockey stick. There's nothing more true than that to writing. I mean, you need to just write and write and write before anyone cares, or before it takes off.
Okay. So good takeaway there. And I think that consistency is key. I know a lot of times the last marketing organization I was at, one of the biggest things they were asking is, hey, what works the best? And it's like, hey, consistency works the best. Even if you did the same thing over and over, being consistent will be paramount. So you definitely have to stay with it. So you guys, Acceleration Partners has received a lot of accolades for being a great organization to work at from multiple entities. How do you guys accomplish that? What's the focus to make such a great environment for your team?
Yeah, so I always love the question, but I'm always, careful in the answer to say that I don't think there's a universal definition of a great culture. I think there's some things in a great company that we like to think, oh, they treat people well and they pay people well, and sort of the basic needs.
Sure.
I think a great company is just sort of super consistent between what it believes, what it says, and what it does, right? So we have tried to be super consistent about who we are, what our values are, who we're looking for, and that that is right for a pretty small percent of the population. What we've done is spending the right time figuring out, who wants that. Like Bill Belichick wins championships. There's plenty of people who would rather go make more money and not play in Bill Belichick's system, right? Like you kind of know, like if you go there, what you're getting, what you're giving up, and why you would like it. If you're a super selfish person looking to maximize their own benefit, like you probably don't want to play for the Patriots. That's not what it rewards. So I think we've just been consistent in that. I think we kind of are what we say we are, but doesn't mean we're for everyone. In fact, I think a lot of people see those awards, they go read some of the reviews, they kind of miss the part about we're like trying to be a number one player in our industry in client services and an agency. And that's really fast, high pressure work.
Mm-hmm.
So while we're supportive and a great place to work, we're not an easy place to work by far. I would say, like, if you're looking for a middle lane type job, like this isn't it.
Right. And so from a talent standpoint, where do you guys, are you doing assessment tests up front to find and make sure that they align to those cultures? Or are there instances where you see somebody, and we'll stay in the Patriot zone because I'm a Pats fan. So you see the Randy Moss that maybe has some baggage, but you go out there and you sell them on the culture. What's the format for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, we talk about and put out into the world the types of things that should attract people that are interested in working in that kind of team or environment. We've built our own process. It's a lot of it's based on Jeff Smart's work at GH Smart and Who, which is, I think, really science evidence based hiring.
Talk to
It's
him
really
this afternoon.
Oh, you did? Yeah.
No, I'm talking to him later.
Oh,
so
you are?
Yeah,
I've had him on my podcast. I love Jeff. And like, look, there's so much interview voodoo. And he talks about, or some CEO that's been asking, like, what kind of bread would you be for 5 years? And they believe that that's a determining question, or what kind of animal, when there's no statistical validity, to that. So I believe in a process. I believe there's so much bias in interviewing, because we all come from our own situation. And I wrote it in an article today that we found that years ago, we don't test people. We do like personality tests and stuff more about team dynamics, like afterwards. It's not a hiring thing.
Okay.
But people, before we had a check and balance system, people were hiring people that scored like identical to them on their personality test without knowing that. Like, without it, they were clearly drawn to the mirror aspects, and that's not what makes a great team. So our process is very about, can they do the job and are they the right fit for the team? And we built our own sort of assessments to determine both of those things. If you get the right person but the wrong fit for the job, it's possibly salvageable if you have another role, that they're better suited in. If you get the wrong person, it's not salvageable.
All right, good insights. So let's talk about your guys' focus. I saw you gave a talk about marketing affiliation and partners, and really trying to scale up from that standpoint. Marketing performance. Why don't you share your insights there?
Sure. So what we do, which I've still failed to make clear to my parents, is we help manage these things called affiliate or partner marketing programs.
Okay.
And you can think of them as kind of like business development, where there's an element of shared risk. In most digital advertising, you go and you buy some sort of input from a partner. You buy clicks or impressions or a billboard or something, and you're making a bet that there's an ROI there. So how affiliate and partner marketing works differently is you go out to the world of people who have audience or cloud or awareness, and you say, here's what a sale is worth to me, here's what a lead is worth to me, and you sort of enter into a digital partnership. You track it all and you pay them for outcomes. So I would say, hey, if you're going to run this podcast with me, and I'll pay you 10% of every new client all day, every day. You go do what you want to do. We'll track all that, and then we'll pay that. So we help build those large partnership programs that are enabled by technology for a lot of big brands. And particularly now in this environment, it's something that people are leaning more towards, because you have a lot more brands going direct to consumer. So their budget isn't about creating awareness, it's about generating a sale, right? They might have for years ago been doing brand marketing, and now they sell directly on their website. And there really isn't anyone in theory who wouldn't rather pay for performance. So there seems to be a shift to, with more digital marketing, to say, why would I enter into something that could be win-lose? Why don't we make sure that it's win-win? So we help build and scale those partnerships for pretty large brands on a global basis.
Okay. Yeah. And it totally makes sense. So speaking of, building and sales, big deal today. I don't know if you've heard it yet, but Gap has signed on Kanye West for the next 5 to 10 years. Any thoughts on that? They're anticipating $1 billion in revenue, which is incredible considering that they did $4 billion last year.
I didn't see that yet, and we do some work with them, so that's really interesting. Yeah, look, there is an increased formula in this world, right? Of infuse a celebrity into a brand. I mean, it builds in the marketing. I
Right.
think it can be work really well, and then if that celebrity says or does something that is off brand, it can be a huge problem, but it is a much more common formula, and it's almost a form of affiliate marketing, right? Where you embed the person in the product, they have their audience. It's interesting. Like, that would not be the first brand I would have thought of, logically, but I'd be interested to see what they come up with.
Yeah, I'm interested too. I literally just saw it before we jumped on here. So yeah, it'll be curious to see.
I actually thought you were going to say there's a growing list of companies that are saying that they won't advertise on Facebook or Twitter this year. That's starting to add up in a pretty meaningful way.
Well, that is, and that's trending right now as well. And there's a lot of, politics, social movements right now. Things are rapidly changing. So you're a speaker, author. I'm curious what your perception. I imagine you used to travel a lot, and I don't know if you've traveled at all since this all went down. But
not since March, yeah.
Okay, so what's the forecast for you as you look? Not like, hey, when do you think things are going to open up, but what do you think the format for events is going to be? Are you seeing anything immediate right now as far as like hybrids, or virtual? How does that landscape look?
Yeah, I think work from home, travel, I think there's gonna be a lot more hybrid. Most of the people I know who are heavy travelers have said that this has kind of taught, well, if they speak or whatever, they probably have lost a lot of income, so they'd like to get back to it. But there are different mediums being offered. There's more opportunities. One of the things is you typically, speak to a company, and then there's a couple questions, and then you leave, right? I think the opportunity for some of the speakers in this is to engage much more with the audience on a one-on-one basis than they would have. But they kind of have to change their medium from just doing the same speech and then walk away,
to actually engage.
Right, to talking, to saying, I'll do a follow-up with a group, to your managers want to jump on a call. Like, that kind of access is so I think we're going to go back to more hybrid. Most of the people that I've talked to who have cut back their traveling are like, I really don't want to go back to what I was doing before, right? They want to be somewhere in the middle. Like, did I really need to do all that? Like, in our business, there was a certain type of thing that we were doing, these events where, like, they required a lot of traveling. They were kind of hit or miss, and we sort of stopped doing them, like these certain partner things. I was talking to my marketing head this week. I'm like, if these are all virtual for the next 6 months, sign me up for as many as I can. Like, I mean, if they're getting all these people on and I can do it from home and I don't have to fly to California, like, the risk reward spectrum totally changes. So I think a lot of things will end up in between. I think anyone who's planning to go back to exactly how it was, I think if anything, it is just accelerated trends that were already in play.
Okay, well, so let's talk about that. Video has been one of the biggest channels that's been talked about for
Yeah,
honestly a few years. But a weird thing happened, right? Like a light switch happened when suddenly it was physically impossible for anybody to communicate
yeah,
other than video. I know, we're using Zoom today, and I know that there's Zoom fatigue,
there
but
is it's real.
it is real, but the
Yeah,
reality is people that were afraid to get in front of the video before, right? They were just, they'd pick up the phone instead. This has opened doors, and it's led to some
totally.
really meaningful engagements. What's kind of your vision as far as maybe how you guys are going to be using? You've talked a little bit about it, but how should businesses be looking at leveraging video moving forward?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I've been doing some speaking on sort of our remote culture and framework, and one of the things we say is we always use video just for a 5 minute call or a client call. And before COVID, and we would go asynchronous, right? So if you're my client, I jump on, I don't see video, I leave mine on because I want you to see my intonations. I'm talking like I think that's important. So I'd say we had a like 50% hit rate before. I had a client literally when the camera went on, didn't know what Zoom was, like went under the table. My publisher had never gone on video before my books. I talked to her for years. I'd seen her once in person, but never. So, but that has actually almost forced everyone, over 40 or something like that, maybe
Yeah,
35, into the comfort level. So I do think that is a real permanent change. I've now noticed, and I think afterwards, people who didn't get on, they're not going to worry about being perfect. I mean, most of the kids running around and
yeah,
pots on fire, and I think this notion of having it, making it perfect. So I do think that has dramatically accelerated among, I'll call it the middle-aged group, and older, the comfort with video. I think if you were under 30, it was a default, and
right.
you could see the comfort level. I mean, if you ever watched a sort of someone before record a video for a company who was over a certain age, there's such a level of discomfort versus someone who's like 20 that's just all they know is being on video all day
Right,
long. Yeah.
right. Well, you touched on it, and I do think it's great that we've kind of let down this facade, right? We're real people, especially because most of us are in our homes when we're doing this
Yeah.
right now. So it's actually, to me, it's brought some more meaningful, conversations. I've gotten to know people better,
Yeah.
which has allowed me to actually work better for them, because there is a better relationship there.
The kid breaks into the room, you don't stiff arm them, you grab them and put them on your lap.
Exactly. I had a dog on yesterday's VOD. It was like, oh yeah, let's see the shop dog. So
Yeah, so I do think, because what's interesting, we have been fully remote for 10 years. One of the probably the largest in the US who's done that.
okay,
And I think there was often, so we even had protocols. We had protocols on how you show up on a client call because we felt like we were facing bias, right? So when you're on a client call, you're dressed, you're showered, you're in a nice place. Ideally, you have a background. If you're on an internal call, whatever you can do. With a client, so our people were actually set up better for that. I think with clients and everyone now at their kitchen table and otherwise, it's sort of just leveled the playing field in that respect.
yeah, I do know the bias that you're talking about, because I think even when this started, I felt that was there. It was like, oh, I need to make sure, maybe I should have a jacket on right now.
Or I'm not
And
serious. Yeah.
correct. And then, I pop on and somebody's in a t-shirt. It's like, oh, I overdressed this situation.
Yeah.
So, okay. So let's talk about
Look,
Friday.
but there's one area. I was just gonna say, when we do go back to normal, though, or whatever it is, I do think, I think there's a general understanding now. But I do think if you're pitching for $1 million of business, like you don't want to show up in a t-shirt and have your kids run like you do want to, create a little more of a professional environment where you can.
Yes. Dress to the moment, or
Yes.
yeah, prepare for them.
Dress for the job that you want.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so let's talk about Fridays. So you've got over 200 content that's been going on for quite some time. Share where this
Yeah.
started and share what it's about.
So it started as just a note to my team I think I've been saying 5 years for 6 years, so maybe it's 6 years
Okay.
ago. That came out of me and going to a leadership retreat, improving my morning routine, getting the advice consistently to read something positive and write something positive. A lot of the reading positive stuff that I got was a little too much in the rainbow and unicorn category for me. Like,
Right.
I kind of like some of the tough love stuff. And so basically I just started writing something about on Friday, sent it to my team that was distributed about 40. It was about kind of professional development or an idea or a concept, a little bit of like pushing and motivation at the same time, but it wasn't around work. And people started sharing it and sharing it outside the company. And when I kind of was getting that feedback, at some point I actually opened it up and let anyone sign up and threw a couple hundred friends and family on the list and figured and made it look like a regular email still and figured I'd get these, what the hell is this? Take me off your Friday note. We renamed it Friday Forward because it was forwarded, and I ended up having to build a
Oh, okay.
website. And 5 years later, it's about 200,000 people in 60 countries that get it. And I know it's shared in a lot of companies and intranets. And I was looking at last week's one, and someone shared it. One person shared it 10,000 times.
That's
So
incredible.
it's interesting.
Okay. So content is something that we've been talking about for a decade, maybe more.
Yeah.
Um, Friday, like, what's your process like, right? Because I feel like, people don't even start doing content because they just burn out even thinking about it. So, what do you source for inspiration? Do you have a process, or is it at this point for you? It's just kind of second nature.
I think both.
Okay.
You know, again, I know what I'm good at. So I'm very good at ideas. I'm very good at taking concept, getting it on paper. I'm a terrible editor. It could take me an hour to write Friday Forward and 3 hours to edit it. So I
Right.
have a great editor who, worries about is that plural or it's, and I don't have to worry about that. And I can pull together two concepts. So yeah, there's sort of a process that just exists now as a sort of keystone habit, which is I draft it on Mondays. We usually edit it by Tuesdays. It's done, and then it's up for kind of production on Wednesday. It actually has to go out Thursday afternoon for it to be Friday morning in Australia.
Okay.
So by about 4 p.m. So it goes 7 a.m. wherever you are in the world is when you get it. And some people have said to me, oh, I want to write. So I'm an idea person. Like, ideas aren't the problem. I keep a bunch, but what seems to work well is when I run into something in current event and I
Yep.
tie it to a theme or something I had been thinking about.
Okay.
But someone said to me, like, I couldn't come up with an idea every week. That would be too hard. But I want to do. I'm like, then write a monthly one. Like, if that's don't force yourself to write. I mean, I almost could do one every day if I could, but like, that's just how my crazy entrepreneurial brain works. Like,
Right.
there's a lot of things that I don't do well. So that's not the gating factor. So the gating factor for me is getting it cleaned up, edited, produced, all that stuff. But I was just talking to someone weeks ago, and I'm like, if it's stressing you out that you don't know what to write, but you want to do stuff, like, you don't have to be weekly. It could be monthly. It could be bi-weekly. Like,
Yeah.
right when you have something that you think you really want to say, if you're going to make a 2x2 Punnett square, you really want to say it and it has value for the reader. that's the
Right.
that's the sweet spot. And if that's daily or that's monthly, I would pick the intersection point of that.
Well, so you've been doing this for 6 years. At the beginning, were
Yeah.
you still writing in an hour, or did you just get better and better at putting these ideas and concepts together?
I think you get better, the formula. Yeah, if my writing's not better now than 6 years ago, then I'm not learning pretty well. Also, I've learned things to avoid or what can be misinterpreted, or I try to stay out of certain politics and stuff. But I have a pretty good sense now when I might get some, negative reaction to things. So I do think you learn a little bit of the nuances of anything, but writing, as I said earlier, it is one of those things where you do and you do and you do before it rewards you. It almost has this like built-in sort of because a lot of people do it for the wrong reasons, right? They're trying
Right.
to write for marketing, and like, if you want to make an impact, write for your own clarification, write for creating value for others. if I've talked to some of the people, or James Clear, who's got a 700,000 person email list, he
Mhm.
said like 4 years he wrote this stuff every week, and he wasn't sure if anyone was reading it. So it definitely supports the sort of the long-term effort. Then it's almost like if you're trying to do it for the right or wrong reasons, it won't work.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about a lot of things are happening right now. A lot of businesses are struggling. Obviously, if we could time travel, going back and starting content, 2 to 3 years ago would have been a great approach for them. It might have been make things more sustainable. But what do you think, or what are you seeing that businesses are doing right now? Either pivoting in a new direction or
Yeah.
just anything. Obviously, everybody looked at cash flow immediately,
When you
right?
mean they're
So
doing right now, or they're doing correct now? Which way did you mean, right?
well, yeah, no. So that's a good point, because I
Yeah.
think businesses are doing things. So, what are you seeing businesses do incorrectly, and what are you seeing businesses do well right now? As everybody's kind of, just trying to tread water.
Yeah. The businesses, I've written a few of these articles. The businesses that are doing well have had no sacred cows. They haven't focused on fear. They have just pivoted and focused on what it is that people need now, right? Whether it's the restaurant who goes all in on delivery or opens up their parking lot. We have a famous Chinese restaurant in Yaris that I saw yesterday, they brought in AstroTurf and set up 6-foot tables and brought in a movie screen. Like, rather than lamenting that they can't have people indoors, like,
Yeah.
let's do what we can. All of those businesses seem to be doing, like, keeping their head above water. Like, I think the ones that are just pissed that it's not January 2020, they're annoyed. They're saying, look, I'm a restaurant, like, this is my experience, I won't do takeout. Like, that's fine. You have totally, I mean, if you have the money and whatever to say, like, I don't want to break my brand promise or otherwise, but if you're trying to keep people employed,
Yeah.
it is always been a mistake across history to not deliver what the customer wants. It doesn't matter if you have the best horse and buggy in the world if they want a car. It just doesn't matter. Um, so that's the same strategy around content. Like, we just totally pivoted our content strategy. What do people need now? What are the questions we can help them answer now? What are the things that they're worried about? What are they fearful about? Like, we just turned all of our content into, like, answering those questions and trying to provide value to people. Not worried about would we make money on it, but how do we help people? So I think that's the biggest difference. The folks acting from a place of fear, I think, have struggled, and people from acting a place of abundance and just like, we are where we are, like, what can we do?
Right.
Or they might not be thriving, but I think they're surviving.
Okay. So, when this first started, it was a health crisis, which
Yeah.
quickly turned into an economic crisis. And then, it's rapidly evolved into a social crisis right now
Yeah.
across America. From a business standpoint, we've had some businesses that are progressive. We've had some businesses that, maybe they're not progressive, but they're at least responsive. And then there's some businesses that are, they're too corporate. What's the recommendation to businesses to be more conscientious about, in these important social issues?
Yeah, I mean, it is a landmine out there. So it's very hard to give advice to other people around this. I think that I think there needs to be a conversation within your own organization
Okay.
first, and just opening up the dialogue and having that conversation. A lot of the platitudes that we saw, the PR written stuff, the social media, like, it felt like people were compelled and forced to do that. It almost feels like checking a box more than being authentic.
Right.
Some companies don't want to take up these kind of issues, and they're worried about alienating employees on other things. And I also think there's a big difference between a consumer facing brand that feels like its marketing every day speaks to its customers and they need to align their message to what they're worried about, to a B2C company that
Yeah.
doesn't talk to its customers in that way.
Right.
And you know, I think almost like a Nike or an Adidas or someone, like, they have views, or Patagonia, they've had distinctive views in the markets. I mean, as the CEO, I have tried to not have company views. We try to support our employees, create an environment. But I think actually sometimes it's polarizing if I were to project my political views or social justice views or ever and make those representative of the organization. So I don't think there's a right answer to this. I think avoiding a conversation, ignoring it within your own organization is really problematic. But I also wouldn't be compelled to just follow other people's timelines or patterns, and figure out a way for each organization to both address the issue and maybe like attack it in a meaningful solution oriented way beyond a
Checking.
copy and paste press release from someone else.
Right. Well, I think what I'm hearing ultimately here is, resort back to your culture, right?
Yeah.
And find out what that culture and what you guys stand for and what that's about. And then, ultimately, I think corporately as well as just societally, have a conversation and start there, and then make a decision. So.
Yeah, actually I didn't say that, but thank you for reminding me. We tied everything that we talked about to our company's core values and how, this is how we act always. These are the things important to us. By the way, one of our core values is excel and improve.
Mm-hmm.
And we definitely think, one is embrace relationships. That's how we feel about other people. The other is an excel and improve. And there's some awareness of, hey, we could probably do better here. We probably need to, even though our industry talent pool is really homogeneous, like we shouldn't use that as an excuse. We should go try to do more things. But yes, we tied it back to what we said we have always believed in, rather than driving down a separate path.
Right. Okay. Is there anything else that you think is relevant right now that we haven't covered that might be meaningful for businesses out there?
Yeah, I think if you can help, it's probably the time to help people. I'm not saying you're out there in pro bono work and everything, but if you have an opportunity, you have a talent, you can use that to help people, help employees. I think that the people might have a short memory for being locked up or some of the things that happened to them during this time. We tend to have short memories. I don't think people have short memories for how companies and leaders and businesses treated them during this time. I think they will have long memories, and there are a lot of difficult decisions that need to be made, but they can be made with transparency and grace and respect. And I just think a lot of people in organizations are going to have defining moments now, and it's a time to try to be your best self. There's a gym chain around here who there's no way they have a chance of survival based on how they handled the pandemic initially and disappeared and left everyone charging. They were charging all their clients with no way to undo it and no phone number to call. I don't think they'll ever recover from that, even though that was only a 1-month incident.
Well, it reminds me, and I'd love to give credit, but I can't remember who passed it on to me, but it's your brand and your value will be largely represented by what you do when things are difficult or when things go bad versus when it's the status quo. It's good. Oh, I got my cup of coffee. Everything's great. But when you get the wrong order and they make it right, or when times are difficult and you step up, that lasts, it's a legacy, right? And so.
Right. It's a quote, but I think it's also data that a customer has a higher score, thinks more highly of a business that resolved the problem successfully than they never had it. Okay. And I also would like to fix the butchered quote at the beginning, which I said, which was, I think talent beats hard work, but not talent that doesn't work hard. Right. Okay. I think that's what it was.
Okay. All right. Well, Robert, I want to thank you for coming on. I appreciate it. And I would love to, get you back next year and see how things are going for you guys.
Yeah, thanks so much. And if anyone is interested in Friday Forward or some of the work from home resources and stuff, you can just go to robertglazer.com/connect, and I've put a whole bunch of resources up there.
Perfect. Well, thanks, Robert.
All right. Thanks so much.
All right.